Hello and welcome to the Think Big series, a collection of dialogues with leading speakers brought to you by PSG. I'm Alishia Seckam, and today we're taking a look at the new political era South Africa's entered with a government of national unity at the helm, but more specifically, what the new government needs to do to transform promises into policy, to achieve common goals, address systemic inequalities, and ensure economic growth. Joining us with his perspective is political analyst, commentator, and writer Justice Malala. Justice, always a pleasure. So it's good to have you with us on screen today. And I've got to ask you right at the top, now that we've had some time to digest it all, and with President Cyril Ramaphosa's new inclusive cabinet in place, bloated as it is, how are you feeling about where things are at and where and how the dust has settled?
I am so happy with this conclusion to our election, Alicia. It was always, I think all of us going into this election were very nervous about what kind of result would it be. We knew where the ANC was, we knew how weak it was, we knew that the opposition is ascendant, but did we expect this manglemoose, this uncertainty? No, but I'm very happy that primarily President Cyril Ramaphosa, John Steenhuisen of the DA, and Helen Zille managed to strike this deal. And I think this deal gives us an opportunity. I think it's a chance for South Africa to really do something extraordinary. 30 years after we achieved 1994 and what people call the Rainbow Nation, the miracle of that time, we have a chance to do that again. And to the points that you've made, I think that this could be the economic revival, the economic burst that we've all been asking for, working for, trying to get our leaders to buy into. And I think this is that chance. So I'm very happy. And I'm very happy that the market is so happy about this outcome. I think Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but I was just going to say, that seems to be the broad consensus and sentiment at play, where South Africa's economics has been constrained up to this point by the politics. The thinking now seems to be that the formation of a GNU sees the balance of probability shift in favor of, a future national agenda that will expedite growth-linked reforms. We've had, as you've alluded to, markets rallying behind that notion. But are we jumping the gun, realistically speaking? How quickly does the new political dispensation gain traction?
I think there's two things. The first one is that we've got the political agreement, if you will. And I think the rewards, whether it's the strengthening of the currency, the rewards that you're beginning to see are good, and we should celebrate them. However, how quickly and how fast can we go towards beginning with the hard work of democracy, the hard work of a coalition government? That will be the first 100 days, the first year of this administration will be key. The first 6 months and President Ramaphosa's leadership of that will be key. So since the formation of the GNU, the signing of the agreement of intent, the building and negotiations and long negotiations around the cabinet, I think the report backs, the leaks from the various players have been positive that, look, we seem to be coalescing around something. That will be a challenge. So I would say the first and the big challenge is, what does the song say? Staying alive, staying alive. It's for this little baby to stick together and stay going for a significant amount of time that you can see that. So first off, stay together, stay inside. And the key thing is, one, everyone has to believe, and particularly the two major players, the ANC and the DA, have to believe that it's better inside. It's more rewarding and profitable for them to be inside this tent than to be outside of it. If they can get that together, that would be absolutely amazing, and we'd have started.
We're going to get to focusing on the dynamics within the tent in just a bit. Before we do, all of this optimism, Justice, is mixed with some kind of trepidation, right, on whether we can move forward decisively or whether we have clashes in ideologies keeping us in a state of inertia where, the talk and the dialogue and the need to reach consensus actually hampers urgent action that's necessary. So just how much risk are you pricing in?
I think there is significant risk that the various parties could pull apart. I think what we must not discount is the fact that we've always had consensus primarily around economic policy in South Africa. The problem is when we've had that consensus within the ANC itself and within its tripartite alliance, there's been some pushback, some pulling back on some of these things. If you think about what happened and what we did with the National Development Plan, South Africa was, in a way, we were playing ball. We were at an inflection point. 2009 happened. Jacob Zuma was the president of the country. A lot of people who'd been in the fast-growing environment of the 2000s said we need a way to continue that momentum. And so that's when you saw Trevor Manuel, who used to be our finance minister, becoming the chair of the National Planning Commission, and the NDP being developed. What happened with the NDP was that you had this fantastic document that was supported by the DA, the COPE, and many of the parties that were in existence at the time, and yet it didn't get implemented with vigor, and that was because there was no one pushing for it to be implemented with vigor. And so I would say what we have in this iteration is that there is enough that can push what is still a great plan, the National Development Plan, that we can begin to, how shall I say, we can begin to actually do the things that we should have done even 10 years ago to get it implemented. So I think there's significant risk, but I think we can get through it. And the next few weeks, as the parties, the individuals begin to gel, if we can get through those first 100 days, I think that there is a beginning there. So yes, trepidation, but a lot of hope and a lot of avenues where I think if the players get together, there can be huge profit politically for them to say, look what we did with Home Affairs, look what we did with agriculture, look what we did at finance, and so forth and so forth. All those elements can work for the various parties. They need to see that there is profit for them being inside rather than being outside of the tent.
Absolutely. And, you underlined there that we need to start seeing things gel as opposed to seeing a jostling, right? A jostling on ideological positions or decision-making based on political patronage. We've got to start seeing bold decisions being made here. Just as the government's priorities and, the program of action, so let's move to that now, are usually articulated in the medium-term strategic framework. And that's guided by the election manifesto of the governing party, in this case now of the GNU governing parties. So if they're taking advice on this, how do they make this work? How do they get the alignment right so that we move to the actioning elements more so than we've been able to in the past?
First off, they all need to agree that there is no winner here. The ANC got 40% of the vote. The DA got 22% of the vote. The rest got bits here, bits there, and so forth. So humility is a key to this next few months. There needs to be an acknowledgement that I won't get everything that I'm asking for, that I want. I have not won. The people of South Africa have not said, as they did in the past to the ANC, go and do what you said you want to do. And so if that permeates the entire arrangement, you can begin to have actually a very dynamic situation where it's, I get something, I get one thing. If I am in Home Affairs, I can say, as the DA, this is what I've got. I'm going to fix for business the visa regime so that they can bring skilled workers in, so that they can bring talent in without waiting months and years, and that person finding a job in Switzerland or elsewhere. And that is a quick, easy win that people can go for. So So I'm of the view that you slice it up and say, what can I achieve in my little corner? Don't fight every battle if you're in there. If the DA wants to say, I'm against the NHI, and I will fight for the NHI not to be implemented, but I'm prepared to concede that it is what you want and so forth. And let's find a way. I will take you saying it doesn't affect everyone in the same way that you're saying it is in the bill that the president has signed now. And I'll take just a little bit and then you can go ahead. But you will give me freedom to move decisively on these aspects of trade and industry, or these aspects of home affairs and skilled migration and so forth and so forth. Then you can begin to cut it up, and the individual ministers and deputy ministers begin to focus on the things that they know they can do, they have a mandate to do, and they can get it done very, very quickly.
It's certainly going to be interesting to see how much of that kind of advice we have the government actually taking, because there are cabinet appointments being expected to see, policy-based tensions, ministers of agri versus land reform and rural development, case in point with the DA and the PAC holding very different views on land. So like I say, it's going to be interesting to see how these parties start to manage their differences to maintain stability and avoid political paralysis. That all being said, Justice, does the ANC, having secured a disproportionately high number of seats in Parliament, prove problematic?
It is problematic. I mean, I think from the get-go, it shows that, and I'll make an example here of what happened in Gauteng, where Gauteng, the ANC got 35% of the vote and the DA got about 28%. And you had a situation where Premier Banyazali Sufi was offering the DA just 3 seats in a 10, 11 member cabinet. And you say, but that doesn't look right. It looks very skewed. And that's why you have the situation you have in Gauteng right now, where you have the ANC alone, but unable essentially to get the majority to pass the budget to essentially move their just in office. And you can see the red lights and the gridlock that lies ahead for that administration. So in many ways, you need humility and understanding that I did not win this thing, but I didn't lose. So I have a role to play and I have something that I can give. I think that will be key to the discussions as we go forward. I think that it's possible to break those. There are many, if you look at the agreement, the agreement that was signed right at the top by Helen Zille and Fikile Mbalula of the ANC, it was interesting in the sense that it said we need to develop deadlock breaking mechanisms to ensure that we can move forward. And I think those will be key. The past month of negotiation may have moved so quickly that some of these things have not been done. A proper examination of those deadlock breaking mechanisms. What is the meaning and depth of consensus and consensus making, and so forth and so forth. So how much consultation does one do? These are some of the things that have not been clearly articulated just yet. And I hope that they are articulated, because a time will come when they will need to be used. And at the moment, it may just seem like it will never come, but it will come. I always tell the story, Alishia, about President Nelson Mandela back in the 1990s, 2 years into the GNU administration of the time. He wanted to change finance minister, and he went and spoke to Trevor Manuel. At the time, no one knew that Trevor would be so successful as the Minister of Finance. They agreed that no, Trevor wanted the job, and he called, Mandela called FW de Klerk and said, look, I'm going to appoint Trevor Manuel as the finance minister. He didn't consult FW de Klerk. He told him. FW de Klerk felt slighted. He said, in his words, he said, I thought we were partners. We were working on this together. And I was just told in a phone call, and it didn't feel nice. It wasn't collaborative. And that was the end of that first GNU. So I think how one breaks deadlock, how one gets to consensus, how one consults will be key to all these things. And it will be the ANC, it will be the DA, and it will be the smaller parties. Some will leave, some will stay, some will want to leave, but it's better that they stay if we can get them to stay. So it's a high balancing act, but it can be pulled off with the leadership and so forth. And so that would be another thing that we need. Leadership.
Absolutely.
Sensitive to all these matters.
Sensitive, but also that leads with a whole lot of maturity, right? More so than we've seen in the past. Where are you seeing opportunity, Justice, for policies to coalesce, to lift South Africa out of its 1 to 1.5% GDP rut? Because that's the challenge the GNU is up against, right? To implement the right policies that will enable South Africa to break out of its low growth trap without falling into a debt trap. And it's going to require tough decisions and policy trade-offs that need inclusive political support.
Yeah, I think there are some areas broadly that we can agree on. Take fiscal policy. I think there has been again and again people have said you're spending way beyond your means. You need to do better and so forth. I think Godongwana has started on that road. I think the DA broadly supports bringing down our debt, making sure that we spend on the right things instead of the wrong things, which we've done a lot of. We've spent a lot on blue lights and presidential protection instead of putting money into policing on the streets and so forth and so forth. So you can identify some of those things. I think one of the things about South Africa where we've been lucky is that National Treasury has been such a fantastic institution. Even in the state capture years, huge chunks of it managed to stay independent, managed to stay dedicated, and have been an absolute example. So you say to the Ministry of Finance, where you have the minister, Godongwana, you have a deputy from the DA, you say, you guys work out where we don't have to wrangle over our fiscal stance, where we can go out to the world and say, we've agreed that the next 5 years, this is what we're going to do without the niggles. Then your messaging is constant. You don't have to go to the FATF or to any international body. You can just say, look, we've agreed, just this box because we are working on it. Here are milestones, we can do it. Then you identify the Minister of Home Affairs, the new Minister of Home Affairs, who's a DA DA MP, Leon Schreiber. You look at what he's done, and I think this has been key. For years and years, business has been saying, please, can we get skills into the room? Can we allow people to hire skills that you don't have and allow them in? And you can see the beginnings of that in what is done, saying, let's get the visa regime, let's give people who need to reapply a bit of relief so that they can get their houses in order and so forth. You do something like that. And so my view is that you can identify a trade and industry, you can identify at Home Affairs, you can identify in agriculture, in all these ministries, areas of commonality, and you say, we don't have a fight here, let's get it done. I would say just one last one on this. I would say there are easy wins. Transnet and the rail network, you need to say, we need to get this sorted. We've got the support of business who are begging to work with you. You've got the support of many other sectors of South African society. Let's get this thing done. The way we seem to be getting some of the electricity challenges resolved now.
Yeah, and I'm going to home in on that in just a bit. Before I do, Justice, I mean, you alluded to NHI at the top. What are you anticipating when it comes to engagement on new policies, that those that are proving to be controversial? So NHI, the state bank that's being proposed that aren't necessarily garnering socioeconomic agreement amongst the GNU participants.
No, that I've said before the election, before President Ramaphosa extraordinarily signed that bill into law, just 2 weeks before the election, there is what did Maggie Thatcher say? This lady is not for turning. I can tell you now, civil society, the healthcare professionals, the opposition, the DA and others, they will challenge this bill in court. That's the first thing. So it's set to go on and on and on. Secondly, there is no money for it. So when you have the Minister of Finance saying, I don't have money for a basic income grant, I don't have money for an NHI, and we need to tighten our belts, where's the money going to come from? So I find it extraordinary that the new Minister of Health, who's the old Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, saying, you know what, I've been given a mandate by the WHO, by the president, by parliament to go ahead and do this. Where's the money going to come from? Secondly, that you're going to spend the next 20 years in litigation. So leadership in this case would be straight up the president saying, I can't get this through. It's not an easy game. This is something for political posturing. I can go on a platform and say the DA or the opposition is stopping me from doing it, but I will do it. But it's not, fix the healthcare system that we have. Make sure Jubilee Hospital or Baragwanath and so forth work before you go on these grandiose plans. So I would say NHI is something that it will be a fight, but it's an unnecessary fight. It's one of those fights where you're not going to win now. It's parked in the courts. Let that go ahead if you want to fight it in court, and concentrate on the things that you can do. Health is a provincial responsibility in our constitution. Make sure that Gauteng can fix the hospitals. Tembisa Hospital, where Babita Diokran died, was killed for whistleblowing about the terrible things that are happening there, where we know during the pandemic that the hospital was buying skinny jeans. For who? For why? How did this happen? If we're not fixing that, why are we doing this? So it's focus. It's saying, yes, we all want free healthcare and a universal healthcare that covers everybody. But let's fix what we have now and make it work for ordinary men and women in Tembisa. Then you can get to the big fight later on. So that will be a key part of showing leadership in this instance. If we don't do that, then imagine the many others where we'll get into the same little fights on ideological basis, because the ANC largely on NHI is ideologically driven and not particularly driven by what's key for all of South Africa.
And as you've said, what we're looking at is political posturing coming up against the actual effectiveness of leadership, which is going to ultimately be tested against the extent to which, this government has deliverables to show. What are some of the deliverables you're looking out for? And, as I ask this question, I'm reminded of something that Busi Mavuso said about how they came up with the three work streams that business and government are hard at work on: energy, logistics, and crime and corruption. And that is, what are 20% of the things that if we were to fix would shift 80% of the sentiment? So, Justice, you mentioned one right at the top, but what are the quick wins that would give the union, this coalition political framework, the confidence and the credibility it needs right now?
Wow, it's a big question, and it's in a way it's a question that we could begin to hone in on. For me, the key thing is to move the dial on economic growth. when we talk about economic growth, what are we talking about? We're talking about businesses producing things and selling them and getting money into ordinary people's hands so that they can go shopping and buying things for their families. And that's how you create jobs, that virtuous cycle that can come from that. So we need to move away from the 1%. And to do that, we need to go back to Cyril Ramaphosa in 2018 and 2019, get that investment confidence that we can do things here and it's not going to blow up. We are going through a bit of a confidence boost right now. We need to use that. And through that, we'll create the jobs and we'll go from being in the 30s, perhaps to going back to being at 28% and 25% unemployment. If we get to 25%, and this is a terrible indictment on us that I'm now saying, if we get to 25%, because we are 32, 34%.
Yeah.
But that's where we are. But if we can get to 25%, it would be extraordinary, just the number of people who are back in jobs. If we can get to the 20% we were at in 2006, 2007, that would be even more spectacular. Those can be two numbers that we focus on, be laser sharp about it, and say we are going there. And how do we do that? Part of it is what, to the point that you're making about Busi Mavuso, get the railways working. For me, the past 2 years have been heartbreaking when you hear a miner saying, I've dug deep and now we have so much stock that's just sitting. We can't get it to the port down in Durban. We can't get it to Cape Town to put it on a ship that takes it to Germany or wherever we want to take it. How can that be when there's demand and we have product, but we're failing to supply? So it's things like those. If we can get that logistics framework up and running properly, we can do incredible, amazing things. But
and we've already seen hints of it, right? Where we've seen this collaboration between government and business come into play, Justice, and we've seen how it's kind of built up confidence across the board. But where it's raised confidence levels, it seems to have raised the bar of responsiveness and accountability as well. Where's your confidence sitting as far as having the right system of checks and balances in place is concerned?
You mean where's my confidence sitting in this process?
Yeah, in terms of having, the right checks and balances in place to hold people to account, because that's what we're looking for right now, right? Is yes, growth, progress, but we're looking at accountability or looking for accountability too.
Yes, absolutely. It's a difficult question, and I'm going to be honest. We haven't succeeded where we should have. The NPA has not been as strong or as transformed as it should be by now from the days of state capture and the hawks and all these institutions being in the pockets of politicians. However, progress is being made. So I think at the political level, there will be jostling to hold people, to point out the mistakes and failure to implement, to act, to deliver on the program that is emerging right now. But there is another kind of accountability. It's that we are a country that is riven with corruption. Where are the institutions that will help us stop this kind of corruption, stop this rot that we've all moaned and moaned about over the years? We haven't built them up enough. We are getting there, but not enough. So will President Ramaphosa be strong enough to make ministers accountable when you have a cabinet of 32 and 43 deputies and so forth and so forth? So all these are burning questions. All these are
Especially if you throw in the appointment or one of the recent appointments being made at the JSC, right? Raising some concern about the integrity and the stability of SA politics.
Absolutely. And whether the opposition parties are part in many ways are being co-opted and will be able to hold power to account when they are part of the power themselves. So there are all those questions. So I want to be honest. I want to say we could have done so much more, and perhaps this is a chance for us to do better. And by that I mean, if the opposition parties that are now in the GNU can realize, and I think this is a national realization, that just because we are in a government of national unity does not mean my responsibilities to put pressure to get the systems right. That it doesn't mean it's the end of that responsibility. That will be brilliant for all of us, because the ingenuity, the talent that is there in the opposition will be part of the administration, but the pressure and the need to do better in the next election will drive them to point out the things that are not working. So
Okay.
I'm worried, but I'm hopeful that this motivation will still be there and will continue to drive things in a upward trajectory.
So, Justice, when it comes to timelines then for key priority targets, I mean, what would be a realistic timeline to start making marking some of our milestones against? I mean, is 5 years enough? Well, what's the saying? A week may be a long time in politics, but 5 years is incredibly short in which to deliver.
I think the biggest enemy that President Ramaphosa and his team have to recognize is that it's time. There is no time. We suffer in South Africa from this delusion that we have time, that, 1994, here we are 30 years later, and it shows clearly that we misused our time, believing that, we will do this tomorrow and so forth. I was very concerned by the minister in the presidency who said that, no. Everything will be by a committee. Everything must go through President Ramaphosa. I think what should be clear is that here's the mandate. Here's what we agree on. Go out there, implement. Yes, we can announce the thing together. We can take credit together, but let's get this thing done. So it can't be another, we'll wait for a year. 100 days is a good marker. Let's make that 100 days matter. Let's hit the ground running. None of the new ministers, even if they are totally alien to the portfolio, are not people who've sat in parliament and any other place and listened and fought over all these issues. We can do things very, very quickly, and we should aim to do that. Otherwise, our lunch will be eaten by the Rwandans, by many, many other jurisdictions who do brilliantly at delivering for people.
Well, Justice, on that note, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for having joined us today. It's been great catching up with you. And to our audience, remember, the social media campaign on the series is #ThinkBigPSG. The series is free, it's shareable, it's open to anyone interested, whether you're a PSG client or not. So do keep the conversation going. Until next time, from me, Alishia Seckam, it's goodbye.